It was December 21st, 2012. I had recently been hired onto Zelda Informer to make videos, and there was nothing I loved more. I was looking forward to my next project with excitement, when terrible news hit. The world was ending. I lay down dejectedly on every flat surface in the house, sometimes falling asleep out of sheer panic. If only Doomsday weren't coming, I thought to myself. If I wasn't having to take all these emergency naps, I could be making a video every day. But alas, it was out of my hands. There was nothing left to do but accept my fate. As I faced my death, I had but one regret. That I could never work for my great webmaster, Nathaniel, again. God damn! Now, for the longest time, people have been wondering whether or not games should be considered art. Now, anytime I bring this subject up, it's undeniable that people are going to get upset at me, and they're going to say, all games are art, they're just like movies, they're just like books. But look, Halo's not the same thing as the Venus de Vanilla. It's not no Van Gogh Starry Night. However, over the recent years, games like Limbo, Journey, Madden 2013 have been bringing back the question of whether or not games should be considered art. This is really hard because art is so subjective and has so many different meanings that different people are going to have different ideas. To me, art is something that brings out an emotional response in the person participating in it. Now, when I say evokes an emotional response, I don't mean a game that changes your life. I've still never played a game that changes my life. My parents still don't love me. But there are definitely games I've played where there's been a moment, or just the game itself, that has just left me thinking about it after I played it. And I think that video games, as a medium, have ways to impact the audience as art that no other mediums have, because you have the audience interaction. So what I'm going to do, now that I'm still alive and can do these videos, is a multi-part series about different games that I've played that I would consider to have artistic merit. However, because there's so many different ways to be artistic, and video games are kind of still a new medium that we haven't entirely explored, I'm going to be dividing it into a couple different categories. This week, we're talking about character development. That's right, the characters with the largest breasts. Now, these lists are going to be highly subjective because I haven't played every game in existence. I actually put this video off for a while because I was playing some games that I was considering. I don't want to put a game on a list if I haven't actually played it. You know, I don't want to just take people's word for it. I've still got a huge stack of PS3 games that I'm going through. There's so much. There's so much game. There's also the fact that I find different things appealing than other people, and art is subjective. I don't like games that make me confront things I don't like about myself, so I'm probably not gonna put those on my list, or it's gonna get too personal. Okay? Okay. Anyway, here we go. This is my top 5 games. Character development. Let's go! Number 5. The Metal Gear Solid series. God, do I have a love-hate relationship with Metal Gear Solid. I have so many fond memories of it, but sometimes I just don't feel like dealing with this shit. It's one of the most well-known franchises, mostly due to the story, and God is it a kick-ass story. However, what made the story so awesome was that it took the time to develop its characters. Not all of them, mind you, but the villains in the first game come to mind. Instead of feeling overjoyed when you kill Sniper Wolf, the development that Wolf and Otacon had gone through makes you feel bad about killing one of the hardest bosses in the game. However, that's nothing compared to Metal Gear Solid 3. Snake Eater is my favorite in the series because of how it changes the way you see some of the most crucial characters in the franchise. While the bosses aren't the most developed, and the main antagonist, Volgan, has the depth of an evil Schwarzenegger, the interplay between Naked Snake, the boss, and Eva changes everything. It may seem odd to have gone back in time for the third installment in the series, but if they hadn't done so, then the final game, Guns of the Patriots, wouldn't have been nearly as powerful. Everything you thought about Big Boss is turned around on you, and he was truly made into, in my opinion anyway, the most sympathetic antagonist in any gaming franchise. Ever. The final cutscene of Snake Eater left me with chills, and that alone would get the series on my list. But then, there's still Raiden's journey from the little bitch to the big bitch. Robo bitch. Then there's the fourth game, which deals with Snake's mortality and brings so many of its characters full circle. Kojima made some questionable choices in Metal Gear Solid, and it's by no means perfect, but god damn if he didn't try, and he gave me some of the most memorable gaming moments I've ever experienced. Number 4, the Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney series. This was the last series I added to the list, and I felt so stupid when I realized how long I've been working on the list without even thinking about Phoenix Wright. Maybe it's because it's on the DS and isn't considered a huge franchise, or maybe it's because it's often just weird and comedic. But Phoenix Wright has amazing character development. That's what makes it so addicting, the characters. Well, and the music. The more I thought about the arc of the series, the more I realized how much the characters actually grew. Now, chief among them is probably Edgeworth, who evolved from being the grouchy, mopey character that fangirls got hot, throbbing lady objections for, into a likable character. Ugh. The case where you deal with Edgeworth's deep-seated guilt and help absolve him of it just might be the gameplay segment I invested myself in the most. I could not put the game down until I finished that case. It didn't matter that it was 6 hours long. 20 hours for people of my intelligence. Phoenix himself usually doesn't develop as much as the characters around him, but that's not surprising considering he's the main character, and that's usually what happens with a lot of main characters. However, in his third game, Trials and Tribulations, and then continuing into Apollo Justice, he even gets developed. Then you add in characters like the completely incompetent Detective Gumshoe, who through sheer willpower and devotion to Edgeworth and Phoenix manages to save crucial cases, and people like Adrian Andrews, a minor character who carries a surprising amount of dramatic weight, and you have one of the most well-written games in history. The entire series is written around the characters, their relationships, and the flaws that they're trying to overcome, and that's why a game with a puppeteer who gets his ass handed to him by his puppet brought a tear to my eye more than once. I mean, domestic violence is usually just funny. Number 3. Final Fantasy VII. I brought up Final Fantasy as a joke while discussing the list with a friend, but after we stopped making fun of Hope, we realized that there was actually a lot of merit to the 7th game. Now, I thought about 10, but really only a handful of the characters get any real development, and it just feels a little forced to me. I don't know. But 7, oh boy. I know you're all probably thinking of the famous scene where Aerith attacks Sephiroth's sword, but that's not really what comes to mind for me when I think of 7. I mean, sure, it was a great scene and all, but the bitch had it coming. Moving in on Tifa's man? Karma Chameleon's coming for your ass, boy George. In all seriousness, though, the most memorable part of the game for me is probably Barrett's arc by the Golden Saucer. The sheer amount of crap he'd gone through, and the way that they handled his character as he got closer and closer to the saucer, growing unusually quiet and then disappearing, and then how he finds the best friend he thought he had lost years ago, only to have to kill him. And don't even get me started on Nanaki's father. Use a soft. Use a soft. Use a soft. Not every character has a moment as moving as these two, but they are all at least developed somewhat. And you know what? That was awesome. And new for RPGs at the time. Games don't need character development, they only need gameplay and a basic plot for the gameplay to function in. Character development really only happens when a developer puts care and time into making their game, and that's why I think 7 stands out above the others for me. It's not really about the plot, about beating Sephiroth. In fact, before the final fight with Sephiroth, Cloud tells everybody to go home and find a reason to fight him. They all had a reason, and that was Final Fantasy VII's strength. The individuals. You can feel the humanity in it, and it's clear that Sakaguchi put a lot of his own feelings and thoughts about his recently deceased mother into the game. Now, I've heard that 9 has really good character development, but I haven't personally gotten to play it yet. So, you know, you should check it out if you want. But for me personally, Final Fantasy VII has the most developed characters out of any of them. Most developed characters. Number 2. Heavy Rain. Heavy Rain is an interesting game because the development isn't handled the same way as the other entries on this list. Instead of you watching the development, the characters develop through you. In a way, the characters are changing as you change. Forget whether Ethan feels justified shooting a drug dealer. Do you? Everything the characters go through is up to you. Are they brave enough to risk their lives in this situation? Or would you rather take the easy way out so they don't die? Is it worth the drug addiction to get an edge in solving the case? All of these decisions affect the character in the long run, and instead of you guiding their development, you are their development. Now, this is still debatable because who's to say the gamer isn't just making arbitrary decisions and is actually responding emotionally and isn't just regretting the fact that there's not a crosshair on the screen? Well, then that's a shame, because they're missing the whole point of the game. There are several scenes that stand out for me, Scott Shelby's revelation probably being among the top. There's really not much else I can say because the entire game is, well, it's an experience. As the credits rolled after I finished my first playthrough, I couldn't really move. I was thinking about everything that had happened, where things went right, where they went wrong, what I could have done to have helped this character. It's really hard to make any concrete decisions about this game because there's just not much else like it to compare it to. But in my eyes, its characters are some of the richest ever made, and it's a game that everybody should play through at least once. Number 1, Majora's Mask. Okay, sue me for predictability, but come on! Majora's Mask has a world full of dozens of characters who change over the course of 3 days, all of them in different ways and representing different themes, and many of them being directly affected by your actions. For the Zelda team to pull this off on the Nintendo 64 with a year of development is miraculous. There's so much heart in this game that it's really hard to play through it and not feel something. Just take the masks, for example. The character masks are a way of finding peace for the restless souls of the fallen. Even the Deku that you never see has a sort of hidden arc where you realize that he was the son of the Deku Butler. The fact that characters as small as the Deku Butler have an arc more than makes up for the fact that Link doesn't develop. Ever. And makes me wonder how more games haven't taken a page from the Bomber's Notebook. We still have so many side quests and characters that are completely meaningless and empty. Why don't we have anything like Pamela's father, or the Gorman brothers? Even the Zelda titles that followed didn't really pick up this trend, although Wind Waker managed to keep some of that spirit alive with its townfolk. In Termina, everybody was important, just like in real life. Now, I'm not saying that every character in every game has to have a 10-page backstory and become a post-op transsexual by the end of the game, but Majora showed how engaging a world and its people can be, and that was on the Nintendo 64. Now, maybe it's because of the relatively low sales, or the fact that you can't tell a game has good character development before you buy it, like you can with graphics or gameplay, but if games are ever going to be taken seriously as art, they need to surpass the level of care, heart, and fullness that Majora's Mask managed. Majora may not be my favorite Zelda, but it's the only one that made me want to save a milkmaid. And that concludes my list of the top 5 games with the best character development. There are a lot of close runners-up like Kingdom Hearts and The World Ends With You that I still think are really, really good, but just didn't quite do it as much for me. Leave comments about what games you think develop their characters really well, and I'll take a look at them. I mean, I'd always love to try out new games. If you like this video, check me out at Lord Jackal or my sketch comedy page, Harmpit Productions. If you didn't like this video, stop watching my videos, Dad!